Good afternoon, and again, welcome to the symposium. I have the esteemed honor of introducing our first local, when I say local, he's based here in Atlanta, Georgia, of our distinguished speakers for this symposium. He is the founder and president of the True Living Well Center for Natural Urban Agriculture, and he brings to us over 40 years of global growing experience in urban areas, and he's also a revolutionary in creating jobs, in revolutionizing healthcare, in building community, one vegetable at a time. He also served in the Clinton administration as deputy administrator at the USDA and as senior advisor at the Department of Commerce. He is a graduate of Harvard College with a degree in political science, and he also has a master's degree in plant and social science from the University of Massachusetts. Let us all welcome our distinguished speaker for this afternoon, Mr. K. Rashid Nuri.
Greetings, everybody. Greetings. I am so extraordinarily happy to be here today, and I hope that enthusiasm will come through in my notes, my expressions here. This is the 12th symposium, the Walter Rodney Symposium, and this year's Hungry Nation, Hungry World, Engendering Healthy, Sustainable Food Systems. That's been my life, is building food systems, and the nexus of the symposium and this topic is very, very special to me. What I told Asha when we spoke and Pat is how important Walter Rodney has been in my thought processes and in my intellectual foundings and groundings. And I want to explain that to you and bring that back around to the work that we do at the Truly Living Well Center for Natural Urban Agriculture. I am a quintessential child of the 60s. I was there when all of it went down. And you young people who weren't there will never understand the full dynamic of the experiences that we had. Students were in revolt all over the world, rebellion all over the world. The cities were in tumult. You had all the events, the March on Washington, 63. All the events, things were happening in South Africa, Malcolm being killed, King being killed. One of the things I'm going to show you, I got a short video I'm going to show you in a minute that ties into our work. The King, how he changed his language towards the end of his life. And that is really very important. But my interest as an undergraduate was national development. We talk about black power, nation building. And what did that really mean? Too many of us think that revolution, and to be called a revolutionary, y'all can decide it. I wouldn't say that about myself, but I will tell you about my work. Too many folks back in my day, in our day, thought revolution was going out burning down buildings and tearing up the community. But that's not my understanding. That's pure rebellion and revolt. Revolution is what you build, what you put in place of that which you have taken down. And I think too often we've gotten caught up in the ranting and the ravings, without actually doing the work, building something to replace that, to create the institutions that we can live with. And this is the path that I came out. As an undergraduate, as I said, I studied the men and the women who created the post-colonial world. That was my interest. I read everything that Nkrumah wrote. Read Amilcar Cabral, Frantz Fanon, all of these men who brought new thought, new ways of thinking. In fact, my career path began while sitting in the library. I was writing a paper on theory and practice, comparing the work of Julius Nyerere in Tanzania and Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya. And I was reading a book by a man named Tom Mboya. He was the finance minister in Kenya who was assassinated. And in this book, Mboya says, with all the technology available in the world today, there is no reason we could not chemically synthesize enough food to feed everybody. I said, whoa, that don't make any sense at all. These chemicals is what are killing folks. What do we need to do about that? And it was that moment that God spoke to me and said, learn everything about food from the seed to the table and to do it experientially. And that's what I set out to do. Now, I went, as the young lady just said, I went to one of those effete Eastern intellectual institutions. They will teach you how to think, but not how to do anything. And nobody comes out of there with any skills. Most time when people think about Harvard, you're thinking about the med school, the law school, the ed school, all those places that actually teach you a skill. Undergraduates, they don't. They just teach you how to think. Now, that's invaluable, but for me, when I decided that agriculture was when I was directed that agriculture was to be my work, I didn't even have anybody to go talk to say, where should I go to get some training in this area? So I went down the street to the University of Massachusetts and began my work there, although my degree was in plant and soil science, I needed to know the language of agriculture. I was more interested in understanding and discerning what are the factors of development, looking at that, trying to put these together. So all of my work there, I got in and out of there pretty quick. It was doing this, taking economics course. I took calculus 5 times until I figured it out in an economics course, how all that worked together. And it was during that period, 1972, is when How Europe Underdeveloped Africa was published. That book knocked me out. Because I've been reading all these men. Nkrumah's Neocolonialism, Last Stage of Imperialism. I mean, looking at how Nyerere was trying to divide the land. He admitted later on in his life that he hadn't taken that approach quite well. But going back, I studied Delaney and Blyden, Bishop Turner, all these brothers and sisters who were very concerned about the conditions of black people around the world. I looked at the men. There were about 7 people who studied with a man named Fard Muhammad. Noble Drew Ali, Elijah Muhammad, what's the bishop out of Philadelphia? I'm losing my name. About 7 people who all taught do for self. I was a member of the Nation of Islam, and that was a very important step in my life. But what Walter Rodney did was help me to see and understand another way of looking at development, because there was a very concerted process of underdevelopment. I've been reading a book lately by Sven Becker. It's called The Empire of Cotton. And most people do not know the significance of cotton. Cotton is the most important crop we grow in the world. The only crop more valuable than cotton is marijuana and cocaine. Think about that. A bale of cotton is about the same size as a barrel of oil. Now, we live in an oil world, oil economy. We fight wars over oil. But cotton, historically, has had an even more important role in the world. We only got oil at the end of the 1800s. Okay? But cotton's been around and been part of the development industry. It was the basis of industrial development in Europe. It was centered, when the Industrial Revolution began in England, it was around cotton. And where did the cotton come from? It used to be that the best cotton in the world came from India and China. Okay? And through what Becker gave me a new language that I really hadn't heard until recently, called war capitalism. Now I understand what it means. His premise is that it's the guns, war capitalism. What I found in graduate school was land, labor, and capital, the 3 things you need to build a nation. That's it. I did a regression analysis, put education, medical care, health care, all of that in there. The bottom line is, it's land, labor, and capital. America is the richest country in the world because it stole the land, okay? It had free labor, and the capital came from Europe to build this country. When we look back at why is it that we talk about hungry? There was a period of time when you did not hear that Africans were hungry, almost poor, starving Africans. How did the African continent get to a state where it was so dependent upon Europe? Okay, I'm going to tie back how the cotton works into that. The triangular trade, we always hear about the rum and the sugar that went to Europe from the West Indies. How many West Indians do we have in here today? A whole bunch of us. My people out of Jamaica, my father. I did not realize until recently, and as I thought about it, became more significant, the role that cotton cloth played in the trade. That's what came down from Europe to West Africa. I lived in Nigeria 5 years. And to see all those chiefs with these big, huge robes on, Barbariga, like, they've got a lot of different names for them. And the higher status that you have in society, the more yards that you're going to have on your clock. Now, this is a land where people don't need to wear all that stuff. It's pretty warm. In Nigeria. How many of y'all have been to Nigeria? I love it. I spent 5 years there, the best time of my life. But it's just this week that clicked for me. That cloth came into Nigeria from China and eventually from England. All those beautiful African prints that you see the women wearing and the men wearing over there, none of that cloth is manufactured in Africa. It comes out of Europe. Today it used to be from England, now it's from the Netherlands, Amsterdam. Nkrumah, who was very important in my life, made some crucial mistakes that led to the economic conditions that created the coup. Ghana still today has some of the best cacao in the world. But he mortgaged that cocoa to get the money to build the dam to electrify Ghana. And when they got mad at Nkrumah for talking Pan-Africanism in the United States of Africa, what did they do? They called in the loans, they stopped buying the cocoa, so all those beans stayed in the silos, which you'll still see in and around the countryside. You go visit Ghana. I lived there a year and a half. And what I learned from him, and again, Walter helped me to really grasp this, that production, rather than shipping raw beans to Europe and being subject to the economic pressures, sending the raw beans, bringing back Nestle's Swiss chocolate candy bars. We should have been sending cocoa and liquor up there and powder, the finished products, added value processing. We've given away the means of production, distribution, and exchange. We've given that power up, but actually that power was taken by the barrel of the gun. And we succumbed to that. So the point of all of that is, Europe underdeveloped Africa, America has underdeveloped the world, and what are we going to do to change that paradigm? How are we going to shift it? Okay? And I think the salvation is in the soil. We got to do for self, we got to feed ourselves. We got to take care of ourselves, build our own communities to support the people who live here, and that has been the work of my life. Okay? And the path that took me there began on an intellectual basis. Then I had to go out and actually study these things and learn how to grow food, how to build communities through that. The first work, it's ironic for me, the very first work I did out of school was to build community gardens, urban gardens out in San Diego, California. People thought I'm crazy today for what I'm doing. I'm going to show you what we do in just a minute. But 40 years ago, there wasn't nobody talking about growing food in the cities. And we've made a lot of mistakes as a people. At the turn of the last century, black people owned 18 million acres of land. Today we own less than 2. Who produces your food? If I control your food, I control you. Very simple. That's how they can control prison populations over food. Put you in solitary, don't feed you. We're going to come under control. We do not control our own sources of food. We do not have food self-sufficiency, food sovereignty. People going hungry. We live in the richest country in the history of the world, and too many people go to bed hungry. Too many people have no health care. Too many folks are homeless. It doesn't make any sense to me. And what do we do about it? We've got to seize the land and take it back, and that's what we do through the work of Truly Living Well. All right? We have 6 acres of land downtown. I'm going to show you those pictures in a minute. But in order for me to get here, I've had to learn. I had come south in 1975 and to still see slaves producing agriculture. Now you say, well, how? We don't have any slaves then. People weren't bought and sold, but in a grand sense, they still are, here and abroad. If you live in the same house, cinder block house, on the same piece of land for 3, 4, 5 generations, a single light bulb, outhouse, water outside, you're still a slave, an economic slave. Whether you want to call it sharecropping, whatever you want to call it, you're still caught up in this economic system that keeps you oppressed. That was difficult for me to understand. I grew up out in California, and to come south in 75, after a lot of the marches and the atrocities, and to see people still living in that condition was very troubling. I lived on a 4,200 acre farm down in Turtle County, Georgia, South Georgia. And these are the conditions that I saw. I controlled, 28 years old, I had 13,000 acres of land that I was responsible for. That's a lot of land. I was way over my head. Now, I learned to swim in the deep end of the pool, but that was a deep one there. But there were some brothers and sisters and people who taught me, helped me understand, learn. From there, I went over to Louisiana, built a 360 acre vegetable farm. Then I went north, Minnesota. We had 30,000 rose bushes under glass. And that's a really amazing experience. You get out there to cut roses. Roses are like a dairy farm. You got to cut them twice a day. Twice a day. It's a lot of hard work. There's two kinds of farming I will never do again. One is rose farming, the other is dairy. Because you can't get no vacation. Then I joined a company named Cargill. I wanted to see how food is moved around the world. We do business with Cargill every day, you just don't know it. They provide the cocoa, the Hershey's, the corn, the Kellogg's, the oil, the potatoes, the Frito-Lay, the eggs, the McDonald's. They're huge. Right now, I guess behind the Koch brothers, they're the second or third largest privately owned company in the world. But they move commodities better than anybody else, so I wanted to see that. And with them, I went to here in Georgia first, then to Asia and Africa, and got a chance to see the world. Came back and worked in the Clinton administration. So all of this to say that how things that we need to look at, controlling our land, controlling the process, controlling our food, not giving these up to others to do for us, to do for self, are the principal lessons that I got from reading Walter Rodney's book. I mean, really that simple. So from there, now that I'm back in Atlanta, I came here from Ghana. I spent a year and a half over there. I came here 10 years ago to begin Truly Living Well, a Center for Natural Urban Agriculture. And our work began in a backyard down in south of the airport in Riverdale. And we've now grown to, we have the largest footprint